In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the parking brake cable that connects the parking brake lever to the rear wheels on this Nissan Altima. Let's get started. The first step is to remove the wheel. If you have hubcaps, it is easier to pull them off first. If not, you can just remove the lug nuts. These hubcaps should just pry right off with your hands. Now you can use a 21mm socket and remove all 5 lug nuts and then pull the wheel off. From the backside of the caliper, let's remove the 2 14mm bolts that hold the caliper onto the bracket. Typically I remove the entire bracket and caliper assembly, but this top bolt is going to be a challenge to reach if I don't remove the caliper first, so I'm going to do it this way. Once again, 14mm socket, remove them both. Leave this one in a couple threads so I can hold it on while you take the bottom one off. Okay, take this out. This is the entire slider pin assembly in this case. Take this out, pull the caliper right off and put it on the upper control arm so that it doesn't hang and put pressure on the brake hose. Now I can use a 19mm wrench to break this free a lot easier. Okay. If you have a ratchet that can get in here, use it. Remove this most of the way. Before you remove it completely, let's remove the bottom one. On this one I can fit a power tool. Take this out, finish removing the top one, and then remove the caliper bracket with the pads and set them aside. Remove the rotor. If you're having trouble removing it, of course make sure the parking brake is not engaged. And if it's not, but it still won't come off, that means it's seized on the hub. So you can use a hammer, tap right between the lug studs, and that should break it free. Mine is already freed up, so that's good. Slide it right off. Parking brake cable hooks in right in this lever. So we have to remove this in order to get it out. And the best way to do this is, unfortunately, to remove the parking brake shoes. So I'm going to remove both parking brake shoes. You may not have to, but the more space you have to work with this, the better. So let's start by removing this lower spring. You can grab it with a pick, a screwdriver, or even some locking pliers if that's what you have. Whatever gets in here and makes it unhook. Remove it and set it aside. Anything you remove, inspect and make sure it's reusable. At the top we have another spring. This also has to be removed, same way. Now we can compress the adjuster, and it looks like mine's very free, so that's good. Sometimes these seize up. Spin it so that you can make it shorter, so you can more easily remove it. Pull it out. Now all that's left is the 2 locking pins and springs that hold the shoes on. Press with a flathead screwdriver, turn 90 degrees, and this should pop out. Make sure you don't lose any of this hardware. Remove the shoe. Do the same to the other shoe. Now we can freely move this adjuster, and you can see that there's a pin going through the parking brake cable and it hooks it onto the adjuster. So we'll have to tap this either up or down in order to remove the parking brake adjuster. Actually, mine is not stuck at all. A lot of times these do get stuck, but I was just able to push it with my finger. So that's good. Continue pushing it and remove the lever, and make sure you remember which direction it goes in so that you don't put it on backwards. Save the pin that came out of here as well. We're gonna have to reuse it. Unless it's in poor condition, then you'll have to source a new one. On the back of the knuckle, you'll see the 16mm bolt that holds the parking brake cable bracket on the knuckle. Break this free and remove it. Set this aside, and now you should be able to pull the parking brake through. If your parking brake cable is stuck, just like mine, use a pry bar and a hammer and tap it until it breaks free. Try to twist it sideways a little bit. And there it is. All right. Follow the cable, you see a 13mm bolt that bolts it onto the subframe on a bracket. Remove it. Take this off. Pull the cable through. A 10mm mounting nut holds this bracket further down the cable. Keep following it, there's another one. On the inside of the vehicle, we have to remove the entire center console in order to access the other end of this cable. On the driver's side, by the pedals, there's a panel that we have to remove on the front side, and all you have to do is just grab it and pull it away. Once it unclips, set it aside, do the same on the passenger side of the vehicle. It looks the same, and you can remove it the same way. Right up above the storage compartment, there's going to be a panel that needs to be removed. It's kind of like a cover. Use a plastic trim tool and pop it off. Slide it out. On the shifter, take this trim piece and pull it down. That's going to expose the clip that locks the shifter in. Take a pick or a pocket screwdriver, remove this little clip. You can push this back up, and don't lose this because we will be reusing it. Of course, that's how you lock this in, because at this point you can grab the shifter and pull it straight off. Now we can free up this panel by the shifter with the cup holders, and it slides out of the rest of the center console. So you have to separate it right here on the inside of the silver trim. I'm going to try and pry it up with a plastic trim tool. There we go. These clips are really tough. Okay, don't go too far because there's wiring attached here. Unplug it just to be safe. Now you can slide it out of the way. Okay, some more wiring over here. This is for the power outlet. Set that aside. And with this panel off, you can see where the two Phillips head screws are that hold on the rest of the center console. Both have to come out. And with these out, we have released the front of the center console, but let's go to the back so we can free that up. From the back seat, you have to grab onto this panel and pull it straight back to separate it from the rest of the center console. You might need some trim tools for this. All right, there's a plug here. I'm not gonna unplug that. You're gonna have to move both seats all the way forward. Doing that will allow you to access the Phillips head screws that hold the back of the center console onto the body of the vehicle. And there is one on each side. They both have to come out. Now you should be able to lift the center console up. Perfect. And with that center console lifted enough out of the way, we can see our cables. I'm doing the driver's side, that's this one, but if you were doing the passenger side, it would be this one right here on the right. Let's take this 13mm mounting nut off that secures the cable to the body. Now you want to pull the equalizer towards the side that you're trying to unhook. Move the cable and unhook it. I'm going to have to push this through the floor, and then we'll fish the new one right in. Now underneath the vehicle, we can pop this grommet off, pull on the cable, and remove the cable. It's getting stuck on the carpet, so I'll have to find something to push the carpet up with. If this shield is in your way, you can bend it a little bit. There it is. Take the new cable and route it into the vehicle. How to push this grommet in. It's useful if you put a little bit of silicone paste on it so it can pop right in place once it's seated. All right, make sure it's sealed up correctly. Once it's through the floor, line it up and put the cable back through the equalizer. All right, reinstall this mounting nut and snug it up. This doesn't need to be very tight, it just needs to hold down this cable. Put the center console back down. Make sure it's fully seated. Put back the 2 screws, one on each side. Okay. And put back this cover. Reinstall the screws that go on the front of the center console. Snug them up. They're only going into plastic, so you don't need to make them too tight. Nice and snug. Plug in the 2 electrical connectors that you unplugged. Make sure they both click. Get this panel back in. Make sure the shifter lines up. Once you're sure it's lined up, drop it back down in place and press it down firmly. Slide this piece in. Make sure that's firmly secured. Take the shifter, slide it back over, pull this piece down so you can lock it in with the clip. Try not to drop the clip, but slide it on. There we go. Make sure it's not going to come off. Slide this back up. And on both sides of the center console, put this panel back on. Now work your way backwards and resecure the brackets. When you tighten these, just make them snug. They're very small and weak and you don't want to break them. Let's bolt this on. Right over here, this new bracket does not have a hook, it just has a bolt hole, but that's fine. We'll try to center it up the best we can. Start this bolt in and tighten it. The cable can move on the bracket, so we can continue centering it up that way once the bracket is nice and tight up against the body. There we go, just make that nice and snug. It's not a very large bracket, just needs to hold on tight. Bring the cable through, make sure it's facing in the right direction so you can actually bolt it on. All right, once you've pushed that through completely, put on the bolt. Start it on by hand. This is an aluminum knuckle, so it's very easy to accidentally cross-thread it. And once you have it started, let's snug it up. Okay, that's bottomed out and snug. Give it about 1/8 of a turn at most. You don't want to destroy the threads in the knuckle, and this just needs to be clamped on nice and snug. With the cable through, let's line it up so we can stick this pin in. Have a hand on the other side so it doesn't pop through completely and fall to the ground. There we go. Fold it in, and we'll push this all the way back in its spot. Of course, the pin doesn't fall out now because it's held on tight in there. Since we have all of this apart, let's clean a little bit and re-lubricate the pivot points, or the contact points, I should say, of the parking brake shoes. So here, I like to put a little bit of brake grease or silicone paste that is rated for brakes right in the pivot point of this lever. And then, of course, the same on the other side. This actually is also a contact point, so this one definitely needs to be cleaned up because it's quite rusty. Make sure you don't remove too much material. I'm just going to scrape off the main rust flakes that are here and then just use a wire brush on the rest of it. A little bit of brake parts cleaner to rinse things off after you're done. And once it's dried off, add a thin layer of silicone paste or brake grease to the contact points that you cleaned up to avoid further rust from building up, but also to avoid any squeaking noises coming from the parking brake shoes. Now, you don't want to put too much because you don't want this to melt and get all over the place, but you want a nice thin layer coating everything, and like I said, a little bit on the adjuster, a little bit on that pivot point. Make sure that stays, and let's get the shoes back on. Line this up. Put the spring with the pin through it. Make sure it's going to fall into its slot. Once you see that this lines up, you can push it through, twist it 90 degrees, and that should be locked in. Make sure the shoe is seated correctly. Just like that. Do the same to the other side shoe. Make sure the shoes are seated correctly at the bottom, and then take the lower spring, hook it onto one side. Try your best to bring it up and over to hook it onto the other side. There we go. Let's install the adjuster at the top. Make sure that the end facing towards the front of the vehicle is the threaded part. The end facing towards the rear is just a little floating cap. Spread these shoes apart. Slide this in. We'll adjust it in a little bit. And of course, the top spring. Perfect. As for adjusting the shoes, I remember that I had 3 threads showing on the adjuster, so that's what I'm going to go for. And of course, once we put the rotor on, we'll double check it, but that should get us very close to where we were. These do not self-adjust, so you have to get them right before you finish your job. Right about there is where mine was, so pre-adjusted to about where it was before. Let's get the rotor on and see how accurate it is. That actually sounds very close to me. Let's apply the parking brake and see how it is after the shoes seat. All right. Well, that feels good to me. You want to make sure that you hear them just barely touch at times. You don't want these to drag. These are not drum brakes, and you want to make sure that you keep pressure on the rotor while you're doing this. Otherwise, if it's at an angle, it's going to drag. I'm happy with this, so we can keep going. Put a thin layer of anti-seize on the surface of the hub where it meets the rotor. That way rust doesn't build up in the future. It is important though that you don't put too much or get it on the parking brake shoes. Both of those things would cause the inside of the rotor to get covered in anti-seize, and that's not going to be good for the parking brake shoes. Put it on the surface of the hub in the center where the rotor sits. Slide the rotor on. Slide the caliper and the pads over the rotor and start in the 2 bolts. .62 foot-pounds is the torque for both of these. All right. Now take the caliper and slide it over the bracket and the pads. The slider pin with the sleeve, that rubber grommet, goes on top, and the slider pin that does not have that goes on the bottom. Start both of these in, thread them in by hand. The torque for both of these is 32 foot-pounds. Put the wheel back on. Start on all 5 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern we're going to torque them to 83 foot-pounds. .83 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. Double check them all. If your wheel had hubcaps, put them on now, and make sure that when you put them on, this cutout goes around the valve stem, otherwise the hubcap won't go on. Take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.